You're listening to the weekly Parsha podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramat Beit Shemesh, Israel, 5777, 2017. This is a special edition of the podcast for Pesach, for Passover. And before we begin, I just want to mention my sefer, my book, which has already come out in the Svarim stores in Israel, and is going to be out in the Svarim stores, in the Judaica stores in the States and throughout the world right after Pesach, right after Passover. The book is called Perfectly Imperfect, Breaking Out of the Ordinary and Striving for Greatness. I encourage you to go out and get the book. It's an inspiring book on topics in personal growth. Now, because this week is Pesach, it's Passover, so we don't have a Parsha that we read this week. That's in the consecutive Parshas of the Torah that we're reading. But what I'd like to do today is I'd like to share with you a thought on Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, which is a special book that was written by King Solomon. It's a love story, and it's an analogy for the relationship between Hashem, between God and the Jewish people, the love that God has for us, the love that we have for God. It's a book that we read on the Shabbos of Pesach every year. We read it in the synagogue every year on Passover. And the reason for this is because Pesach represents the love that Hashem has for the Jewish people. God is beginning a relationship with the Jewish people. They're going to become an Am Hanivchar. They're going to become the chosen nation as a result of the exodus from Egypt. We're going to spend 49 days counting down to Shavuos to receive the Torah, which represents the actual forging of the relationship, the agreement, the conditions of the relationship. But Pesach itself is this love. It's the love that Hashem shows for us, and it's the love that we feel for Hashem, knowing that we are His beloved people, His chosen people. Now there's a pasuk, there's a verse in Shir HaShirim, in the second chapter, the first verse. It says, Ani Chavatzelet-rose, Shoshana-rose, which means, it's very interesting, this language, but the Jewish people here are speaking, and we refer to ourselves as a Chavatzeles, which means a rose of the Sharon, of the Sharon area. Shoshana-rose, a rose of the valleys. And as is the way of the Torah when it speaks in prose, when it speaks in poems, in poetry, so it uses a similar language or a parallel language at the beginning of the verse and the end of the verse that has some nuance of difference. So a Chavatzeles is a rose and a Shoshana is a rose. But what is the difference between a Chavatzeles and a Shoshana? The difference is that a Chavatzeles is a rose, a flower, when it hasn't yet bloomed. It's in its state of, it's closed up. Milashon, the word is Chavatzeles. The root in the middle of it is tzel, which means shade. So it's in a place which is closed up, which is shaded. So it starts off, the verse starts off speaking about the rose when it's a bud, when it's not yet opened up. And then it speaks about the rose as having opened up, Shoshana-rose, the rose of the valley. The Medrash, in speaking about this pasuk, gives us a few different parallels, a few different ideas that describe or go through the stages of the verse, starting off in a stage of being in closure, of being not yet developed, not yet opened up, to a state of opening up, hitpatchut, coming to a place of blossoming and blooming. Let's see this together. Amra Knesset Yisrael. The people of Israel say as follows. We say, Ani Chavatzeles HaSharon. The Jewish people are saying, I am this rose of the Sharon area. Ani hi v'chaviva ani. So the word Chavatzeles has two parts to it. It has the letters Chav and Tzeles. So we have the Tzel, which we spoke about before. We have the shaded aspect of it. There's also the word Chav, which means Chaviv, which means beloved. I am beloved. Ani shechibivani HaKadosh Baruch Hu mishivim umois. I am the one who Hashem drew close to Himself, who showed that was beloved more than all of the 70 nations. Chavatzeles HaSharon. What is this idea? Shasisi loitzel al yidei b'tzal. The first drasha that we find is that the Jewish people created a place of shade through B'tzal. B'tzal was the one we've spoken about who was involved in the construction of the tabernacle. So the Jewish people created a place of shade, created a place for the divine presence to be able to enclose us, so to speak. And that was done through Betzal. Dichsiv, Vayas Betzal es ha'aron. Betzal created the Aron, he created the ark. HaSharon. What is the idea of Sharon here? Shamarti lefonav Shira. So Sharon, which we're translating as Sharon, which is kind of a location, but the root of the word Sharon is Shar, which means to sing. And so the verse is referring to the fact that the Jewish people sang with Moshe Rabbeinu, with Moses. Dichsiv, as the verse says, Az Yashir Moshe Bnei Yisrael. When the Jewish people came to Kriyas Yamsuf, when they came through the Sea of Reeds, they passed through that on dry land. The Jewish people came to the other side, and the Mitzrim were drowned. So the Jewish people sang this song. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, led them in song. Davar Acher. Another explanation. Ani Chavatzelet-rose Hasharon, Anihi v'chaviv ani. I am she, and I am beloved. Anihi shayisi chavuya b'tzilon shel Mitzrayim. Now the Medrash is going to go through different situations that the Jewish people found themselves in, challenging situations, which are represented by the Chavatzeles, by the rose when it's in a state of closure, when it's not yet opened up. We went through the darkness, we went through the shade of Egypt. Ulisha Kala, and in just a moment, Kinsani HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ramses, after all of the plagues, after all of the destruction that was wrought upon the Egyptians, God brought us to Ramses, V'irtavti ma'asim tovim ka-Shoshana, and I started to smell like a rose. I started to give off a good fragrance like a rose with my good deeds. V'amarti lefonav es hashira, and in front of God I said song, shenemar, Hashir yeh lachem kilel hiskadesh chag. This is a really interesting verse in Isaiah chapter 30 verse 29, which refers to the song that the Jewish people sang on the first night of Pesach, of Passover. But it was much later, it was many years later, when the Jews experienced a salvation by God from the hands of the Assyrians. The Assyrians were destroyed, and that happened on the first night of Pesach, of Passover. And as a result, the Jewish people sang. As a result of them being saved by God from their oppressors, from their difficult situation, the Jewish people sang this song. And as the Meforshim say over there, as the commentaries say on the verses in Isaiah, the Jewish people sang on that night, and it occurred on that night, and it paralleled the song that the Jewish people sang at the beginning of Pesach, the original Passover, when the Jewish people were saved from the Egyptians, and they left Egypt as free men. So the first place that we see this idea of starting off in a state of closure, in a state of a flower which is closed, which is bitzel, it's in the shade, hasn't yet opened up. We start off in Egypt, and then we are released by God. We open up, the flower blossoms. We give off this beautiful smell with our ma'asim tovim, with our good deeds, very interestingly. And we start to sing this song. We are the Sharon, we are that flower of the valley, and we're giving off this beautiful song, this beautiful smell. When does that happen? It happens on Passover. It happens on Pesach. We come out of that dangerous situation. We come out of that place of constriction, and we open up to a place where we can do good deeds, where we can reflect godliness into the world, where we can sing a song of salvation. So it's important to understand, when that flower is closed, when that flower is waiting to open, when the flower closes at night, as flowers do, so it comes to a state where it's in a place of potential. It's in a place of readiness to flower and to give off a good smell, but it's not yet ready. It's there, it's ready, but it's not yet ready. The potential hasn't been reached yet. So that's represented by the Chavatzeles, by this closed flower. And then it comes that point, it comes that moment in time where the flower opens up, where the blossoming occurs, where the smell comes out, and where the song is sung. So that's the first place that we see it. Mitzrayim, Geulas Mitzrayim, being in that place of difficulty. But the idea is that the difficulty itself, as we've spoken about so many times, the difficulty itself produces the possibility, or is that beauty in constriction. We couldn't get to the place of becoming Hashem's nation if we hadn't gone through the constriction and the difficulty of Mitzrayim, of Egypt. Davar Acher, another parallel. Ani Chavatzelet-rose Hasharon, Anihi v'chaviva ani. I am she, and I am beloved. Anihi shayisi chavuya b'tzile shel yam. I was the one who was hidden in the shade of the sea. The Jewish people went through the Yam Suf, They went through the sea of reeds. And in just a moment, as a result of that, I was in a place of danger. I was in a place of death. The human being cannot exist in the middle of the sea, under the water. But I was in a place of danger in order for what to happen. I was, first of all, as we said, I started to have a good smell from the good deeds. Interestingly, again, there's good deeds. We need to understand what these good deeds are. But that's the first thing. But the second thing is that as a result of going through the Yam, going through the sea, and I pointed with my finger and I testified, Shenemar Ze Keli Vanveu, as the verse says, the Jewish people said, "This is my God, and I will glorify him." The Jewish people, as a result of the danger they went through, as a result of the great Yeshua, the salvation that they experienced, as a result of that, they were able to point and say, "This is my God. I see my God. I have experienced God completely." Davar acher, another parallel. Ani Chavatzelet-rose, Anihi v'chaviva ani. I am she and I am beloved. Anihi shayisi chavuya b'tzila shel Sinai. I am the one who is hidden in the shadow of Mount Sinai. And I believe that this is a reference to the fact that Hashem, as our Chazal, as our sages tell us, the Jewish people, there was an aspect of the Torah that they weren't willing to receive. They weren't willing to accept upon themselves. And Hashem held the mountain over them. So the Jewish people stood under that shade of Mount Sinai. So they were in a place of difficulty. They were in a place of challenge. It seemed like they could lose their lives. God said, if you don't accept the Torah, this is where you're going to die. They accepted the Torah. They said, Nasa v'nishma in the end. They said, we will listen. We will do and we will listen. But they were in a place of danger. They were in a place of closure. They were in a place where they were in the shade. L'shah kala hirtavti maisim tovim. Shoshana biyadi v'libi. And in just a moment, the Jewish people started to smell in a good way. They had a fragrance as a result of their good deeds in their hands and in their hearts. V'amarti lefanov. And I, the Jewish people, said in front of God, Kol asher diber Hashem nasa v'nishma. All that God has says, I will do and I will hear. So there was a state of constriction, of difficulty, of challenge, and there was a blossoming in the Jewish people's entering into a relationship with God. Davar acher, another parallel. Ani Chavatzelet-rose, Anihi v'chaviva ani. I am she and I am beloved. Anihi shayisi chavuya uremusa b'tzilin shel malchios. And here's where we get to the parallel which applies to us, which is really about our experience today. That I, the Jewish people, I am hidden and I am trampled in the shade of the Malchios, of the Umas Ha'olam, of the nations of the world. The Jewish people can't do whatever we want. We are beholden to the nations. We are beholden to their opinion. We are beholden to their laws. We are beholden to the challenges that they represent, whether we're in the land of Israel or whether we're anywhere in the world. L'machar. And how does that open up? How do we get out of this place of being a closed flower to blossoming? When does that happen? Tomorrow, when God is going to redeem me from the shade of these nations, then I will give off a fragrance like the flower, like the rose. And I'm going to sing a new song. Shenemar, as the verse says, Shir Lashem Shir Chadash. The verse in Psalms chapter 98, verse 1. Sing to Hashem a new song, Ki nifla'os, for he has done wonders. So this is a song King David was telling us we're going to sing in the future when Mashiach comes, when the Messiah arrives, when we're redeemed from the nations of the world. When God saves us with his right hand and with his holy arm. So the final state that we're going to be in, we come in our lifetime, in our times, in our experience, we're in a state of tzel, we're in a state of the shadows, where we're closed up, where this rose that's waiting to blossom. We're in a place where we're in a challenge, where it's not easy to be who we are. It's not easy to be a Jew. We're challenged from every side, whether it's societal pressure or whether it's national pressure on the Jewish people, whether it's individuals. We are pressured. We're in a place of challenge, of difficulty. We can't blossom fully. The blossoming will occur when Mashiach comes, when the Messiah arrives. So that's the final parallel that we see here in this piece. And I think it's particularly beautiful that we speak about Mashiach, the Messiah's arrival, as a parallel to the idea of what happened, the song that we sang when we experienced that first Geula, when we experienced the first redemption of the Jewish people, when Hashem took us out of Egypt. And it's not a coincidence, because we find that our Chazal tell us, it's a Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, on Daf Yud Aleph, on page 11, our Chazal, our sages say that just like in the past, when the Jewish people were redeemed, it was in this month of Nisan, in the spring. The final redemption, the final blossoming is going to occur also in the month of Nisan, at the same exact time. This is a time of redemption. It's a time when the physical world itself expresses the blossoming that's going on. And it's true on a spiritual level as well. There's a blossoming that occurred, and will occur. It's true in the past, in the Exodus, as we saw. It was true in the times of Ashur, the Jewish people, when we were oppressed by the nation of Assyria. And it's true in our current oppression, in our current state, where we are challenged by the nations of the world. And that's going to be redeemed. The redemption is going to come also in this parallel time, and we will sing just as we sang then. We will sing again in the future. And the idea that I want to bring out, that I see over here, the beauty of it is that we look at the challenges that we have, the situations that we find ourselves in, both on a national level and a personal level. We look at them as something that we need to get past, and we wish would be over. Of course, we don't ask for challenges and difficulties. We ask Hashem Dafka that He shouldn't send us challenges and difficulties. But what we see from this medrash is that the challenge itself, the difficulty, the fact that the Jewish people were in Egypt, the fact that we find ourselves in a place where it's not easy to be spiritual, it's not easy to have a relationship with God. This seems to be negative, but the Medrash is telling us that it's actually the state of the flower before it blossoms. It's the state of the flower as it's about to blossom. The flower would not be able to blossom if it didn't originally come into a state of closure, of being in a place of tzel, of being in a place of this shadow. And it's very interesting because the first parallel that we spoke about was that what was the tzel? What was the shadow? It was the Mishkan itself. It was the shadow of God, so to speak. It was the place where we are underneath God's shadow, B'tzel Kel. B'tzalel was the one who created the Mishkan, the tabernacle. And his name represents what the tabernacle is. It's that place where we are in the shade of God. Now, when you're in the shade, you can't see the light. You can't see God when you're in God's shade, so to speak. But the idea is that the tabernacle is that place. It's the place where we recognize that the place where it's dark is actually just a place where that flower is closed. But we're in the flower. We're wrapped up inside of God's love. Ani hi v'chaviva ani. I am the one that is beloved to God. That's what we see. We're wrapped up in this place that seems so dark, but it's actually an amazing rose that's about to open, and it's going to give off its beautiful smell, and it's going to be an opportunity for us to sing. So Pesach is that time of opening. It's a time of recognition that the darkness and the light are only possible. You can't have light without darkness. It's a recognition that the challenges that we experience, the Mitzrayim, the place, the Egypts, the Goliaths, the exiles that we experience nationally, personally, these are all opportunities. These are all the things that build us and help us grow to be the great people that we are. God is with us. V'hisha amdala v'seinu v'lanu, like we said in the Haggadah, that God stands with us. It almost sounds like it's a great thing that we go through these challenges. Throughout every generation, they try to destroy us. And the reason, or the idea is the same idea, that the very difficulties and challenges that we experience, God shows us that He's there with us through all of those things. We're in the tzel, we're in the shadow of God, so to speak. We're in that place where God is wrapped up with us. And we get a chance as it opens up, as we blossom, to see that. We get to see that the challenges that we experienced were indeed those things that helped us to grow the most and to be able to become the great people that we have the potential to become. So I want to bless you. Please bless me. Hashem should help us to be able to see our challenges for what they are. Hashem should help us to be able to go through the yam, to be able to get to the other side of that sea, that seems to be so dark and so difficult, to be able to get to the other side so that we can uz yashir, so that we can then sing the praises of Hashem in recognition that all of the difficulties and all of the challenges were really only for our best. Hashem should help us be able to sing about the fact that now we've gotten to a new place, now we have reached a new spiritual level and a new relationship with Hashem. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos and a wonderful Yontif. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.